Hello, I'm Cassandra Macias, and today I will be defining what is intersectionality. So, intersectionality is the study of intersections between forms or systems of oppression, domination, or discrimination. In the work Intersectionality as a Transformative Paradigm in Feminist Theory and Social Justice by Dale and Coleman, the authors define strong intersectionality to be theoretical and methodological rubrics that seek to analyze institutions and identities in relation to one another. With immigrants being such a large part of our society here in the United States, I will be interviewing a young woman who is a daughter of an immigrant to emphasize that children of immigrants are diverse and affected in various ways through their race, gender, class, and or sexuality. When most people think of immigrants, they think of the immigrant themselves and not their family that is also affected. Race, class, gender, and sexuality are not just categories or characteristics that define someone, but social structures that affect people on a daily basis. And because of them, people may be granted different powers, privileges, and or oppressions. As stated in Defining Contested Concepts by Weber, in the U.S., race, class, gender, and sexuality each have significant history as powerful organizers of social hierarchy that they deeply embedded in our most important institutions. Law and justice, education, religion, family, economy, which were evident in the interviews. Therefore, these social structures are not just labels placed on immigrants and or their families, but factors about them that affect them on a daily basis. For instance, in Families on the Frontier by Pierrette Ondagnao Sotelo, she gave the example that in the U.S., a plethora of occupations today increasingly rely on the work performed by Latina and or Asian women, immigrant women. These jobs are downgraded manufacturing jobs in hotels, restaurants, hospitals, convalescent homes, office buildings, and private residences.
Hi, I'm Ladise. I am a neuroscience major here at UT, and I am Jordanian Palestinian. My parents are both from Jordan, originally from Palestine.
What is your definition of an immigrant family?
Well, I think simply put that an immigrant family is just a family from a different country that leaves their country and goes to a new country with different customs, different cultures, a new language. So it came not just to America, coming from Jordan to America, from Jordan to England, anywhere that you're leaving, where you know to go somewhere new, that's an immigration.
How does race affect immigrants and their families?
I think race plays a really big part in immigrants and their families. I think it puts you at a disadvantage automatically compared to the race that is prevalent in the country you're in. I think you have to work harder for everything to be at baseline with someone who is not an immigrant. I think that an immigrant is automatically put at a lower level because they're thought of as like, oh, they don't know our customs, they don't know our cultures, they're not like us. And so they're already like put down, when an immigrant honestly has to do a lot more to be where someone whose minimum is at, who's American in this case.
Do you believe gender has an effect on immigrants or possibly could?
Yes, I think gender plays a huge part in that. Speaking for my mom immigrated when she was like 22, 23, and she became an engineer back in Jordan, and she came here as an engineer. And from the very get-go, she was already looked like, oh, she's a woman from the Middle East. Like, she learned English here, but yet, no one looks at it like she learned a whole new language and can work in a whole new language. They look at it like, oh, she has an accent. And so even in her work, women are already downgraded here in this country for being women without race or immigration involved, but putting her being from the Middle East, her being Muslim, automatically put her at a lower level. So like in work, a lot of times she'll do presentations, and they're always like, you talk too fast, blah blah blah, your accent, when no one looks at it the fact that she learned Arabic, which is already a really hard language, and then came here and learned English and can do it as well as the people who speak English naturally. and automatically she's looked down upon a woman immigrant. Like, she's a mom, she has kids to take care of, like she can't put all her effort into work, and oh, she's from a different country, so like she's lesser than us, when honestly that's not true.
Do you believe immigrant families have power, privilege, and or oppression in any way?
I don't think immigrant families have power or privilege at all being an immigrant. I feel like that's an automatic disadvantage because you're not American, you're not from here. I've heard that multiple times in my life. I've seen it multiple times in other immigrants' life. I've heard it said to my mother, to my father. Like, my parents are engineers and doctors, and they've had that said to them. And if they were an engineer or doctor from America, you know that would not have ever been said. I think there is oppression. Like, I already talked about my mom at work, or for instance, my mom got stopped for a speeding ticket, and the moment the cop heard her accent was like, why don't you just go home to your country? Like, why are you, like, go home to your land? Like, you know, you're not needed here. And in every instance in an immigrant's life, there's going to be oppression. Like, from the smallest thing, I don't think, like, oppression is going to be has to be this obviously big, like, oh, I'm oppressing you in this huge way. Like, it can be small, but you're still being oppressed. Like, compared to an American who's born here, like someone who's white and American, compared to an immigrant from the Middle East, there's oppression in every single instance, and it will not just be like, I'm flat out calling you something, or I'm like saying or making you doing something to you that's obviously oppression. Like, it's oppression all the time. But obviously at the same time, like, I'm not trying to say, oh, immigrants are always being oppressed and they're always blah blah blah. Like, I'm saying, like, they're just at an automatic disadvantage for that, but they can rise from that, and like, they can be better than that. Like, they don't have to let it like stop their whole lives. And I mean, I keep on talking about my parents, but like, my mom came here, no English, with a baby, and from the Middle East, Muslim, no family, only her degree, and now she's an engineer at a really, really good company in Dallas. And thankfully we have a nice house in the suburbs. Like, you can rise from oppression. It sucks that you have to deal with it, and obviously I wouldn't want to have people dealing with it, because I have to deal with it in my life being Muslim and from the Middle East and a woman. But like, you can't deal with it, and you can get power and privilege after. I don't think you're going to get power and privilege because you're an immigrant. I think maybe dealing with oppression is going to make you.
Do you think sexuality has an effect on immigrants and or their families?
Yes, I think that sexuality does have an effect on immigrants and their families. I personally think, as being Muslim, that it's much harder. I'm straight and female, and I feel oppressed being an immigrant, or a child of an immigrant, and like being in a family from immigrants. So I can't imagine what it feels like to be gay or lesbian and being an immigrant, because like, coming from a Muslim family, my parents are very open and they're very progressive in their thinking, which thankfully like has raised me that way. But like, my family, for instance, in Jordan, they're not, like, they might not say it outright remarks, but in, like, you know, they follow the Quran strictly, so they're gonna be that way, and it's horrible and it's not good, but like, that's the way they are. And so I feel like that mentality immigrants have to deal with it here, like with their families overseas, they still have to like deal with that. And especially I think media has a lot to do with that. I feel like when you see gay people in the media, they're always white and males. Like, you're never gonna see like a Pakistani lesbian, you know what I mean, or something like that. So you, like, it's always like, I just feel like that really honestly has something to do with it. Like, you're always gonna see, when we see gay people, like, we might be more progressive with gay people, but I truly feel like only image we're getting of gay people is white men. We're never getting like images of like Muslim gay guys or Indian girls who are lesbian. Like, you're never getting that, and I feel like that does play an issue with it. And so like, immigrants feel like they can't be like that because it's not it's not being seen, and so they're being repressed and oppressed, and it is a big deal. And I think sexuality does play an issue, and I think it is harder for immigrants to be able to be themselves if they are like that, because they're feeling a lot of pressure from society and from probably having really traditional parents that have some religion-based issue with that kind of sexuality.
Do you see any intersections between your race, gender, class, or sexuality? If so, which ones and how?
Yeah, I think you can't say they don't intersect at all. They all make you who you are, and they're going to be the reason you're oppressed. So I'm not being oppressed just because I'm a female. I'm being oppressed because I'm a female that's Middle Eastern, that's Muslim. I think me being a female from the Middle East makes me more oppressed and Muslim makes me more oppressed than I was a female from like Italy that came here. Like, because of the bad connotations that Americans have with the Middle East, like, that does, my race and my religion cause me more issues here than if I was Christian but I was from Europe, or I was Christian and I was from like somewhere in South America.
Through the series of questions that I asked Ladis, it is evident that her race, class, gender, and her sexuality have an effect on how she is treated or how society treats her on a daily basis, and the various things that she's had to go through while being here in the U.S., since her mother is an immigrant from another country. It is evident that she sees oppression to be something on a positive note, that you grow from it, you learn to do better, you learn to do more, and then you move away from it, and then you have power and privilege. So that is how these things intersect, and how all these things that affect her came together and have made her realize how she can move away from that and become stronger, and use that she is a child of an immigrant to prosper and do better in this country.